What's up, guys? Welcome to our new series, Wisecrack Labs. I'm your host, Helen Floersh. If you're a human being on planet Earth, maybe you've wondered lately, has it gotten a lot hotter in the past few years? Have there always been this many natural disasters? If I reproduce, are my kids gonna have to wear gas masks to soccer practice? And is someone gonna do something about all of this? Now, these are all reasonable questions. It's easy to feel like things are beyond repair. It's tempting to stow away on a Bezos rocket and never look back. But there just might be a way that science can save us. And thank God, because being trapped alone with Bezos and William Shatner sounds horrifying. So today, we're gonna examine one of the ways that science might save us from a rapidly warming planet: direct air capture. Recently, it seems that the apparent media blackout that's been keeping climate change out of the news for the past half-century is over, and the climate crisis has finally made it to network TV in full force. And the recent Senate cluster has largely involved fights over which climate-based policies to include in the president's infrastructure bill. But we're not worried, because if we trust our officials to do one thing, it's to put corporate interests aside for the sake of saving society from devastating ecological collapse. Wouldn't it be funny if I said shit like that? Now, at this point, we all basically know how to stop global warming. We could shift to electric vehicles, utilize wind and solar power, eat way less meat, figure out non-Chernobyl ways to use nuclear power, and cut back on air travel. The bummer with a lot of these is that they seem hard, and in many cases imply a strong shift away from the status quo. We of course want to save the planet, but it's still hard to imagine a world that's not primarily run with the juice of dinosaur bones, much less one where the oil companies agreed to a green new business pivot. But recently, a solution has emerged that seems to make it possible for us to drastically cut down the amount of CO2 in the air without completely upending our current system. It's called direct air capture. Some are super hopeful about its potential.
Direct air capture is really more like actually hitting the brake, and eventually, if we do it well enough, going backwards, actually going back towards the climate we had before climate change became an issue.
While others think it sounds too good to be true.
I'd like to say that the technology is unproven, ineffective, and inefficient.
The basic gist, if we believe the optimists, is that pointing massive vacuums at the atmosphere can suck out all the bad bits, leaving us with nothing but magically pure air. Skeptics, however, think it's not much better than your dad trying to save his marriage by wearing a Bradley Cooper mask in bed and asking your mom if she wants to make love to a star. But before we decide if the science behind direct air capture can really save us, we wanted to see what you think about it. Or, no offense, if you've thought about it at all.
I'm in downtown Los Angeles, and today I'm going to talk to people to see what they think about climate change and air capture technology. Is climate change something you think about a lot?
Yes, it is.
Not too often, but I like to think more than other people.
It's the number one issue on my mind. I have kids, and it's the most important issue to me.
I try not to think about it too much because it can be like a little anxiety inducing.
Maybe like a couple times a week, maybe? Usually every time someone leaves the water running, which pisses me off.
Awesome. Sergio, how about you?
Very rarely.
Yeah.
Like never.
Probably like at least once a week.
Oh yeah, definitely. I don't have a car, so I take public transportation or walk everywhere. So I try to keep my carbon footprint low.
Yeah.
And recycle when I can and all that other stuff that goes along with that.
Definitely. It's affecting Hawaii. We're seeing some significant changes.
Are there areas of your life where you worry about the effects of climate change in the future?
To be honest, no, not in my lifespan.
Yeah, I am.
Yeah.
I mean, especially living in LA, there's a bunch of droughts, fires, which has affected a bunch of my friends and family. And I have family across the United States affected by hurricanes, many natural disasters. Yeah, I'm worried.
Awesome, yeah. Sergio, not so much, right?
Not so much.
Awesome. Is there anything that's like happening, whether it be programs, technologies, anything that you see going on? Are there things that make you feel like maybe we're not screwed?
Not a ton.
Yes and no. There's so much money that's being put into the stuff that we're already using, like fossil fuels and stuff like that. So it's just kind of like to see a big change happen anytime soon. I don't see it unless the owners of those companies decide to switch all their assets, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I think that the city of Los Angeles just in itself is doing a lot of good things in terms of, climate goals and, carbon neutrality and all that, net zero building. So I think it's a step in the right direction, that the ban of, gas-powered cars a couple of years from now. So yeah, that's all. It's great, I think.
No, actually, I have no hope whatsoever. The solution to climate change requires consensus, and we don't have consensus to tie our shoes. It's sad, but that's the way it is.
Have you ever heard of either air capture or carbon capture technology?
No.
Never, no.
No, not familiar with it.
Yeah, carbon sequestration. Yeah.
Capture, yeah.
I don't know that much of it. I know that there's more research going into capturing carbon in the air.
Yeah.
I've heard of it, but I'm not totally sure what that means.
Never.
Okay. This is the idea that we're going to shoot these massive vacuums basically at the air, and it's going to suck carbon out. I'm just curious, like, how that sounds hearing about that technology.
Sounds like a sci-fi novel.
Yeah, I think it sounds crazy and like kind of fun having giant suction fans in the air. But yeah, it seems reasonable.
It sounds like complete nonsense.
I feel like that's what we have to figure out how to do. We can slow down production of all these greenhouse gases, but we have to take a bunch out of the atmosphere. And my husband is a singer, and yesterday he sang to the astronauts on the International Space Station. It was someone's birthday, and he'd asked me, and I thought, if we can do that, and they can be chatting to one another, we could definitely try to capture some carbon out of the air, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we could do it.
This is a side question. What song did your husband sing to the astronauts?
Sang King from Hamilton, You'll Be Back. It was a request for an astronaut whose birthday was, so.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Does he sing to you a lot?
He sings to me a lot, yeah.
Any other thoughts you have on climate change in general? Anything you think people should know, things you wish people were talking about more?
Yeah, no, I think the policy overall, even just as a country, it's going in the right direction, but unfortunately, wish it would have been done sooner. Yeah. And then also, we're not addressing a lot of the companies that are polluting themselves. They're like, especially in other countries, that no one talks about. It's always like, what can we do at the individual level? And yeah, it's helpful, but it's a drop in the bucket, unfortunately.
Unless you've got your head stuck in the ground, it's so clear.
Yeah.
So let's get it done.
Okay, so anecdotes aside, what is direct air capture and how does it work? Well, for those of you who've wondered, why can't we just build a giant vacuum and suck all the carbon dioxide out of the sky? You nailed it, sort of. In general, direct air capture is a way to remove carbon dioxide from the air. It does this by sucking massive amounts of air through giant fans, then exposing that air to chemicals or filters which cling to the CO2. This air is released back into the wild, while the molecules clinging to CO2 are funneled into another system where they're exposed to more chemicals or heat or electricity. This causes them to let go of the CO2, so you're left with a hot, pure stream of carbon dioxide. It basically works like a big artificial tree, if trees could be superpowered by giant fans. The technology behind direct air capture isn't totally new. We've been using some form of direct air capture systems to remove CO2 from air since at least the 1950s. But for the most part, all of that was for use in industrial processes. The difference between what we've done in the past and what we're attempting to do today with direct air capture is scale. For example, the Climeworks plant that recently launched in Iceland is the largest facility of its kind. It filters out about 4,000 tons of CO2 each year, about the annual amount emitted by 800 or so cars. So if we want to make a real dent in our CO2 problem, it seems that direct air capture, even if scaled, can't possibly be a silver bullet. This is something that even the companies working on these technologies readily admit. Despite these limitations, though, the technology itself sounds promising on paper. The US government agrees. This summer, the Department of Energy said it plans to give out $24 million to 15 different universities and private companies for research and development on direct air capture projects. On top of that, carbon capture technologies account for about $8 billion of President Biden's trillion-dollar infrastructure plan. That includes $100 million earmarked for direct air capture projects specifically. But a lot of scientists and environmental activists are seriously skeptical about investing money and resources into direct air capture technologies. To understand why, I sat down with Dr. Mark Jacobson, professor of civil and environmental engineering at Stanford University. He was also climate advisor to former presidential candidate and aviary enthusiast Bernie Sanders. Dr. Jacobson's work focuses on better understanding global warming and air pollution, and figuring out large-scale clean solutions to these problems. He's also very outspoken in his critiques of air capture technology as a viable solution for climate change.
As I mentioned, the most common use of CO2 now is because you don't make any money putting it under the ground. You make money selling it to an oil company to extract more oil.
I started by asking him what he sees as the potential solutions to the problem of carbon emissions and air pollution.
The solutions that I eventually evaluated about 12 years ago compared all the energy proposed solutions, including carbon capture, including nuclear power, including bioenergy. But what is the best solutions are those that don't require combustion, that are based on renewable energy sources, wind, solar, geothermal, even hydroelectric, tidal wave power, storage, and including battery storage, well, other types of electricity storage, heat storage, cold storage, and electric appliances, heat pumps for heating air and water, electric vehicles, some hydrogen fuel cell vehicles for long distance heavy transport like long distance ships and planes, but not technologies that allow pollution to persist and not technologies that continue pollution.
He also noted the importance of thinking about where this carbon goes after it's captured.
As I mentioned, the most common use of CO2 now is because you don't make any money putting it under the ground. You make money selling it to an oil company to extract more oil. And that's what's being done with most carbon capture today, is we're just enhancing oil recovery. And there, 40% of the CO2 just goes back to the air right away. And there's actually no proof that any of it's actually captured, because the rest of it's supposed to go in the oil field, but they're drilling oil. There's no proof it doesn't leak as well. So it's a huge social cost loss. Social cost is energy cost plus health cost plus climate cost. It's like a factor of 10 higher cost in terms of the social cost to use money to buy carbon capture equipment or direct air capture equipment and run it and use the energy for that, instead of using that money to just buy renewables to replace coal or gas.
And Jacobson isn't shy about his skepticism towards direct air capture.
It's much more efficient to prevent carbon dioxide from getting in the air than it is taking it out of the air. You're doing the exact same thing by preventing it from getting in the air than taking it out. But when you prevent it from getting in the air, you're also eliminating air pollutants, and you're preventing mining from occurring by eliminating coal and gas and oil use. You're limiting pollution, mining, and CO2. Whereas when you try to take CO2 out of the air, all you're doing is reducing CO2, but you're not even reducing that much because a lot of energy is required.
He also discussed how direct air capture can actually help keep oil companies in business.
If the fossil fuel industry can say, look, we're capturing carbon from the air, then that's an excuse for them not to close their coal plant. Because they're saying, oh, we're offsetting our carbon dioxide, which they're not, because they're not doing their accounting properly. But the fact is, that's the goal, and that's the impetus for carbon capture and direct air capture. It's solely designed for some people to make money and to keep the fossil fuel industry in business.
You've mentioned, where you feel like we should be focusing our resources from your perspective. In terms of the kinds of, when you're thinking about wind, solar, geothermal energy, that kind of thing, where do you feel like there's the most potential?
Well, 90% of the solution will be wind plus solar. Now, geothermal, hydro, tidal wave, they're the combination of the two is about, or the four, is about 8% of, so I'd say 92% wind and solar and 8% all the rest.
Even with all of his skepticism towards direct air capture, he did have some hopeful thoughts on the future. Is there anything that can be done really at the individual level, or is this something that comes down to governments and major corporations?
Individuals can do a lot, communities can do a lot, and policymakers at state, local, and national levels can do a lot. Yeah, I'm really optimistic. The reason is, I run the numbers. So, we've developed plans for 145 countries and all 50 US states to transition to a 100% clean renewable electricity and heat for everything. And after having run all these numbers, we know it's possible to do everywhere. And keep the grid stable and do it at low cost while creating jobs, reducing health problems, reducing climate problems. So yeah, I know it's possible, not only technically, but economically. We have 95% of the technologies we need already. The only ones we don't have are for long distance ships and planes to run on hydrogen fuel cells, for battery electricity. But those are not really even technological obstacles, just they haven't been commercialized. So yeah, I am an optimist, and I've seen things going in the right direction on average. It's like lightning. You make 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. That's kind of what's going on right now, but at least it's going in the right direction. And I have a feeling there are fewer people objecting to a clean renewable energy transformation. So I see as soon as we get rid of these last misperceptions about distractions, carbon capture, direct air capture, bioenergy, nuclear, once we get past those hurdles, then we will have more and more focus on what works.
Thanks again to Dr. Jacobson for taking the time to hang out with us. So if Jacobson is right, all we need to do is just quickly switch all existing energy sources to renewables and we're good to go, right? Right? Well, not quite. First of all, as dope as it would be if we could pull an all-nighter and switch over to renewable energy sources all at once, that's not exactly feasible. Unless, of course, every person, politician, and corporation all agreed. And even if it was possible, we've already pumped so much CO2 into the air that we either need to A, remove at least some of it from the atmosphere, or B, continue to face catastrophic consequences of global warming. And while this technology has the capacity to take CO2 from the air and store it in the ground, which keeps it out of our atmosphere, many companies have a very different strategy. As Jacobson explained, most captured carbon dioxide isn't stored underground, it's sold. So this CO2 re-enters the ecosystem in one fashion or another. And who's buying this stuff? For the most part, the oil and gas industry, which uses it for what's called enhanced oil recovery. That's casual oil lobbyist talk for injecting CO2 into the ground so it can squeeze out every last drop of oil. So the CO2 in the atmosphere, largely produced via fossil fuel consumption, is being removed only to then be sold back to those very companies to help them produce even more oil. It's the ultimate late capitalist satire. George Orwell couldn't have dreamt it up. Other familiar faces at the metaphorical carbon auction include big agriculture, which uses CO2 to manufacture chemicals for soil enrichment, companies that make products for fire suppression, and the food and beverage industry, which spends more than $260 million a year to make sure your LaCroix, PBR, and Mountain Dew are addictingly fizzy. Which, I mean, that sounds fine. So who can direct air capture count amongst its fans? Well, pretty much the biggest polluters in the game. The tech, airline, and fossil fuel industries. Companies like United and Microsoft have also committed to financing direct air capture projects in order to offset their own pollution. And this is where the heart of the controversy around direct air capture lies. While there's no question that CO2 removal is inherently a good thing, when the world's biggest polluters start getting involved, you gotta wonder about their intentions. If we have an easy way to just suck CO2 out of the air, does it become a hall pass for companies to stay hooked on fossil fuels? Now, on the one hand, air capture facilities like Climeworks plant in Iceland really do work. On the other hand, this plant will also take one entire year to capture 3 seconds worth of humanity's CO2 emissions. It's like using a tiny thimble to stop flooding during a hurricane. And for other direct air capture startups, like Carbon Engineering, selling CO2 for use in enhanced oil recovery is the only way they can afford to run their operations unless policies are enacted that incentivize carbon capture. This brings us to a more fundamental and existential question. Can the necessary and urgent changes we need to make to save civilization from climate catastrophe ever be compatible with our current economic system? Or as Nathaniel Rich put it in the New York Times, the most fundamental question is whether a capitalistic society is capable of sharply reducing carbon emissions. We're not so sure, because the ultimate aim of the market economy is the creation of surplus wealth for the sake of money itself. Anything else, whether it be art, healthcare, or saving the planet, ultimately must serve that purpose. This is why it makes sense that direct air capture technology would only be viable if it's able to produce a commodity that eventually leads to some type of corporate profits. So to create the societal will to truly do what we need to do to stop the climate crisis, society would need to be structured around values that can draw a line of demarcation between ecological sustainability and profit. This would mean that the technologies we use to save the planet shouldn't be evaluated on their ability to appease shareholders, but on their ability to turn back planetary devastation. So while tools like direct air capture can be valuable resources in our fight against further warming, the tools themselves aren't going to be enough. We need the people wielding those tools to have the primary motive of saving the planet. We're obviously not going to end capitalism in the 8 years we have to drastically cut back emissions, but we won't be able to cut back emissions if we aren't willing to at least rethink the relationship between the economy and the climate. So which side of the direct air capture debate do we ultimately fall on? Annoyingly, both. Scientists like Jacobson are absolutely right when they point out the problems inherent with relying on this technology and the ways in which it's being used to help oil companies get away with business as usual. But this technology does work, and we can't completely ignore any technology that has the capability of removing carbon from the atmosphere, even if it's not as efficient as we'd like. It won't be enough to save us on its own, but it very well might contribute to a broader project of slowing down warming. And while this debate can sound a bit grim, there is some genuine cause for hope. As Jacobson explained, all the technology is already there to stop and even reverse some of the effects of climate change. It's just a matter of rallying the political will to make it happen. Our leaders love to tell us that they believe in science, and it seems like the future of humanity might just depend on the earnestness of this faith. That's it for this edition of Wisecrack Labs. Let us know what you think in the comments, and please like and subscribe. We'll be back soon with another journey into the amazing world of scientific innovation, and we hope to see you there. Later.
Sergio, for you, what's your ideal lunch?
Ideal lunch?
Yeah.
Pasta, some sort of pasta.
Amazing. At least you'll be eating well no matter what happens.